Panopticon was a prison concept from Jeremy Bentham. With one tower in the middle and cells lining a circular wall, a single guard could theoretically be watching any prisoner at any time. Sure, in all likelihood, the guard isn't looking, but there's always a chance. The prisoner can never make a move safely. It's the most exaggerated and efficient form of social control, with almost no physical presence forcing self-regulation. The prisoner enacts control on themselves. But you don't have to go to such lengths to achieve this. It's present everywhere. Someone could always be watching. Remember that time you overshared and no one quite knew what to say with their uncomfortable looks? Did you ever again say something similar so freely? They enact regulation on us, punishment, and we enforce it internally, shame. We grow accustomed to what the collective wants and self-regulate. Instead of sharing our true self, we share what's palatable to the others. Through the constant possibility of the guard's gaze, we become overly aware of ourselves and incarnate the rules in our form, the true self slowly fading, piece by piece, until all that's left is another guard. The prisoner only finds freedom in discarding themselves. This is Carl Jung's concept of the persona. A man with many flaws, most of his theories have been superseded by much more accurate and less biased ones. But as a pioneer of the unconscious mind, some of his ideas still find relevance, like the persona. An extension of the collective unconscious, a species-wide pool of inherent information, it posits that we are merely expressions of pre-existing concepts stored within humanity itself, that what we present is
a mask that is a substitute for individuality, intending to make others believe one is an individual. In reality, it is only a role that is played. It is, as it were, the collective psyche speaking.
While I don't believe in the collective unconscious, our prisoner-guard relationship does simulate a collective consciousness. Work doesn't hire us for ourselves, but quite literally for a role. Each friend group anticipates an us that fits with them. We identify with scenes and groups, defined by a mix of general labels others have made. We care because that's what a parent, a sibling, a partner does. Everything we choose has its origin in the collective, archetypes which it has created and then allowed to us. So how much of us is a true self, and how much is merely
a compromise between the individual and society as to the kind of semblance to adopt, what a man should appear to be.
To ever know ourselves, we must first understand the persona. And so today, through a mix of scientific study, Jung's writings, and 5 fantastic stories, that's what we will be attempting to do. Where else could we start with an exploration of masks but Code Geass, a series all about hidden identities, their consequences and advantages. Its main character, Lelouch, is a boy split between worlds. On one hand, he's the son of Britannia's Emperor Charles, bearing the name V. Britannia and partial heir to this world that the Empire has conquered. But he could never collect that, pawned off to the subjugated Japan and assumed to be dead, living as the Lelouch Lamperouge instead. He hates his father for this abandonment of him and his sister Nunnally, disabled from the assassination which killed their mother. Deep down, he wishes to destroy the Empire and create a much kinder world for that sister. But even with his still high status, this isn't something he can do. Just one boy, he's confined to winning money from the nobles he hates in games of chess, hiding his real desires under a detached personality, the nonchalant boy who skips class. No one can suspect an allegiance if he has no cares to show it. This is the first premise of the persona. They are crafted to fit the situation. As he expresses to Colin, seeing a Japanese man being beaten by Britannian citizens,
if we intervene and help him win, He wouldn't be able to sell a thing tomorrow. That's just the price you pay for working in the settlement.
So long as power exists in numbers, hiding oneself in the majority is a trade-off. He has to be around people he hates and watch things he despises, but the other option is simply a momentary rejection of the powers that be, which leads to a permanent rejection of him in turn. Putting on the mask hides who he wants to be, but in service of prolonging someone he kind of wants to be. In total, that coded expression makes Lelouch more real than the uncoded one. In order to fit together without a challenge, we all file off our edges, leaving only what's agreeable. Sure, you lose some of the pictures if you clip the edges, but the puzzle fits together easier, doesn't it? We shape ourselves to those around us to avoid conflict, saving the true self for a better, longer time, with more important people who will appreciate it rather than hate it.
The persona is a complicated system of relations between the individual consciousness and society, fittingly enough a kind of mask, designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and, on the other, to conceal the true nature of the individual.
But no one just has one mask, because no one exists in only one situation. There's Lelouch at school, hiding all of his care. Lelouch as Zero, the faceless rebel who organizes a staunch resistance against Britannia. Even Lelouch at home, hiding his rage from Nunnally. Yes, even around her, he wears a mask. As children, they walked through the killing fields that the war left behind, and he lied to her about what that smell surrounding them was. Just as in the modern day, as he tucks her in with thoughts of rage racing through his mind, but never speaking them. To make that kinder world for her, he wears a happier mask, since she can only see it through him. Even around the most important person to him, this isn't his true self, but a mask serving a purpose. At all times except alone, he is an actor on the stage. This is even more so when he dons the mask of Zero that we referenced. Given the power of the king, Geass by CC, manifesting in him as the ability to command anyone to any action once each, he's able to mount a resistance never before seen, uniting the various rebels of Japan under one banner, the Black Knights. Once sparse, messy resistance becomes an organized, powerful threat, the first real hope since subjugation. The first leader Clovis is dead, its great commander Cornelia is bested at Narita, its superweapon Gawain is stolen away, and so much more. But what's interesting is the contradiction of Zero and how it achieves such greatness. It is a persona which stands out by blending in. The name Zero is literal. He is no one, the placeholder number which disappears once quantity emerges. They have no idea what he likes, what his motivations are, who he cares about, nothing. He commands them, but orders are not motivations. He claims he'll provide liberation, but he never says why. Zero is action without reason, what a self does without any substance. And that's the power of it. An empty persona is any persona. After all, he never actually lies to them and says he's Japanese, or that he is doing it out of a love for their people, but isn't that the easiest assumption? Why would any other kind of person be doing this? The Zero in their mind is formed from their own logic. And since the lie doesn't emerge from him, they can't trace it back to begin doubt, and so it begins even stronger. Why would they doubt what they all know deep down, after all? By being no one, he becomes everyone, an undoubtable cohesion. He perfects his concept, to not just hide his true self for cohesion, to benefit from the collective, but to allow them to hide it for him. To be no one, nothing, so that they can confirm their biases and be whatever they imagine. It's almost obvious. The less true a persona, the more it hides in plain sight.
He takes a name, earns a title, exercises a function. He is this or that. In a certain sense, all this is real. Yet, in relation to the essential individuality of the person concerned, it is only second to reality, a compromise formation, in making which others often have a greater share than he.
The others determine our persona more than us. I'll be you and you'll be me. my secret society. And so, under that arrangement, Lelouch simply lets them be all of him. But lying to his followers, to his friends, to his family, where is Lelouch's time to actually be Lelouch? If one is always on the stage, then does anything exist beneath? The problem with these masks is that they build and build in the minds of others, becoming full of not Lelouch, but of carefree Lelouch, happy Lelouch, Zero the rebel. The world he knows, everything he finds important in it, becomes built upon people he isn't. No matter how much he does for Japan, it can never be revealed that Zero is Lelouch v Britannia, a royal prince, because that contradicts the narrative in others' heads, the self they have created for him. The motivation they applied would be stripped away, and everything would be called into question. Why did he lie to us about this? What was he really after all this time? With his true role known, they would finally have something to grab onto to question him, and all would fall apart. In Season 2, when he believes Nunnally is killed, he launches an all-out slaughter on the party responsible, killing even the innocents within that organization. The rage not of Zero, but of Lelouch shows for just a moment, and this inevitably becomes his downfall, the doubt which leads the Black Knights to hear out their enemies' requests about Zero's identity because, seeing a motivation they didn't imagine for themselves for the first time, there's reason to doubt. The reveal of his name and power leads to an instant coup, and he loses all which he worked for. Build upon a lie, and the foundation can always be ripped out. The persona as a lie traps us into not being ourselves, but acting as ourselves to maintain all that one has acquired. This naturally leads to a detachment. If our reactions show our true self, the things we don't think but rather feel, then we must find a way to hide our reactions, to not feel but only think. To take events as actions in the script which we read, and then plan how to act. This is why Mao, a man whose Geass is the ability to read the minds of others, sees the truth of how Lelouch acts. Inside of him aren't natural reactions and thoughts of himself, but rather
constantly watching your own moves. And there's another part that's an observer, watching the critic.
a first layer which judges all he does, determines how accurate the character is and where it will lead, and another behind that like the audience, watching the scene and ensuring it's the show expected. He doesn't take his actions, he takes Lelouch's actions. When something goes wrong, like his best friend Suzaku being revealed to be his nemesis the White Knight Lancelot the Thorn in his side for the whole series, he laughs exactly because he isn't himself, but the observer. Faced with such dramatic levels of convenience and knowing he must square the circle, what else could he do but escape into that persona and laugh at it? He feels strongly, but the expression of that strength must be an observer's expression, not his own, a burst of surprise for the story, and nothing more. And that's just one example of many. Eventually, from so many, he becomes nothing more than his role. By the end of the series, Lelouch has been eaten away, losing all of his friends, his freedom, even the sister he began this whole revolution for, as she rebukes him for his actions. After all, they were Zero's, and not his, weren't they? Her anger is only accurate. He has changed. He is no longer himself, but the violent expression of a collective will. He ceases to be, and what he can do for others takes over, a man who has entirely lost in all he has become.
The regressive restoration of the persona is a possible course only for the man who owes the critical failure of his life to his own inflatedness. With diminished personality, he turns back to the measure he can fill.
This is what the Zero Requiem is, where he becomes the emperor of the world, and then gives his own life so they can fight against him and unite. Lelouch can no longer find himself, and so he turns to the one measure he can fill, to collect everyone's hatred and then put it to an end, to becoming something that, if taken away from him, still achieves his goal, the last phantom of himself. With a persona spread across the world, this is all he could do, the only route which every will creating him desired at once. All he could do is be the one thing everyone would want from him. and the only thing they could see from him, a cautionary tale about how large we let our personas grow. The experience of watching Trigun is expressly watching a persona slip away and reveal the true self. It begins with Vash the Stampede, legendary outlaw worth $60 billion double dollars, being your average happy-go-literally lucky protagonist. He loves food, he loves women more, and he lucks his way out of every situation because the show says so, dodging bullets like no one's business. Like a tune, he seems to bend the rules of the story to his desires. But that's only how it seems. Moments shine through here and there, a quick read of the situation showing real awareness, a literally quick movement showing skill, a total avoidance of death that couldn't be an accident, culminating in a striking sequence where he miraculously saves a group of innocent civilians through complete and total skill. There is no luck to Vash the Stampede. There's only a man who goes to extreme lengths to make it appear as if he's nothing but, to lean into the narrative that he is a womanizing, murderous scoundrel. Why does a man who would scar his entire body over and over for the sake of other people present himself so differently? No effort is expended without reason, and Vash has his. His persona, whether the criminal or the quirky drifter, is a way to avoid what he finds to be the real pain: human suffering. Their world is a harsh one. Water barons hoard their product, caravans tear families apart through human trafficking, starving children to single mothers traverse the barren land in search of hope somewhere else, and so much more. To truly take in everything awful in this world is an impossible task. A single life could fill a book with tragedy. So what can one person do against it? As happens time and time again, Vash can save their lives, prolong them, but he can't change the world as a whole to make them better. If he stays here and helps this one person, he doesn't help all of the others. If he gives himself up so one town can have the bounty, everywhere else will miss it. And who's to say a corrupt world will even pay? Who's to say the town won't suddenly be beset by criminals trying to steal that very bounty he would have given them? This is why Vash covers up his tears for humanity with a laugh. It's the one thing he can do to better their life, even if just for a moment. Cry for them and you just remind them of their sadness, but laugh with them and for a second they forget. His attitude is a little bit of evidence that they can be happy too.
You're hurting like crazy on the inside, yet you grin and bear it. But the way you smiled was so empty it hurt to watch you.
And maybe, just maybe, along the way he tricks himself a bit. If one spends all day laughing, what else could they be but happy? Eventually, the act becomes second nature and makes it easier to hold back the tears. It's like seeing the world through someone else's eyes, experiencing not the full thing, but a game of telephone passed to the true self by the persona. It's dulled and hurts one less.
The man with the persona is blind to the existence of inner realities. If the external world is, for me, simply a phantasm, how should I take the trouble to establish a complicated system of relationship and adaptation to it?
The self is detached and ceases to feel the pain that it should. And further, an act is exhausting, and this can be purposeful. Constantly watching and judging one's own actions, that's the energy of multiple people being derived from just one. It can only be kept up for so long before a recharge is needed, where feeling anything at all will be nearly impossible. So if Vash acts himself silly, behind closed doors he'll be too exhausted to feel the sadness he sees, to process his trauma. Leaving no time or energy for his true self, he avoids the pain connected to it. But just as interesting is the mask of criminal which he takes on, despite having never caused someone harm without good reason and having never killed. Ironically, we see the real Vash when he's living under the name Eric's, abandoning his quest to stop his brother Knives to instead, well, just live. Using this new persona, he escapes his old responsibilities, the expectations of others, and from this is able to be not who he thinks they see, but whoever he wants to be. Eking out a regular life with Lena and her grandmother Cheryl, there's no gunslinging, just daily toil. Who wouldn't want this after so many years of purposeful exhaustion? But the issue is why Vash is here in the first place, the destruction of Augusta which he caused. Vash isn't human, but a plant, a source of nearly infinite energy in human form. He lives for hundreds of years, hardly ages, and can unleash the destructive power of his angel arm. His brother Knives is the same way, hell-bent on destroying his brother and the humans he loves so much. Unfortunately, Vash is a threat to others, proven as his presence only gets Lena kidnapped. The closer he is, the closer danger is. Whether through his form that he can't control, the bounty on his head, or the actions of his brother, the people around him will never be safe. Desiring nothing but to live a simple life and care for others, he knows he can't trust himself to stay away. After all, if he could trust himself not to, he would have never been Eric's in the first place. And so his solution is to take on a persona they hate. If he can't keep himself away from people to stave off this danger, then he has to keep people away from him. He has to be a lucky idiot rather than a savior, a deadly criminal rather than a friend, driven out of town after town. Even the ones he saves, having revealed his true effort for self and gained their love, eventually turn on him for the bounty. This title and act ensures he can never stay put and put people in danger. Even if it hurts to be denied, it hurts worse to be a killer, and so he accepts the persona, avoiding the potential for even greater pain by embodying a constant amount. And this affords him even more advantages in helping them. When he needs to clear out a town that's under threat, he can rush through the streets announcing himself and everyone will flee. When he's forced into a fight, he can end it by simply revealing who he is, ending with a worse reputation but no death. Take the situation with Julius and Moore, a young couple trying to flee a caravan engaging in human trafficking, with Moore as the latest example. If they don't flee now, they'll both suffer terrible fates. But Julius is the key to the city where they restock, meaning if he does flee, the entire caravan may die off for a few people's mistakes. Wolfwood, Vash's realist counterpart, tries to bring the young couple back to the caravan, seeing the greater loss of life as the worse evil. Someone will suffer either way, so it may as well be the least amount of people. This is the only solution he, a still very powerful man, can find. But a legend can do more. Hired to bring them back, Vash instead kills them both, which the guards take as an act of insanity fleeing. In reality, this was the plan, to give Julius and Moore a way to escape, and the caravan a way to survive. Plenty of witnesses can attest to Vash the Stampede, mankind's first human act of God, killing their key, and so they'll be let into the city anyway, proving it in their genuine fear. It's a third option where no one suffers, or rather, where one man takes all the suffering onto himself, and it's only available exactly because he's perceived to be a legendary madman. To give up that title is to give up his way to find the idealistic solution to all these problems he faces. The best thing for Vash, unable to handle the pain of others, is to be their enemy. Sure, it may not be his true self, but it is in service of benefiting the others, and if he is defined by his love for the others, if all things begin from a collective, is this not in a way true to himself?
Self-alienation in favor of the collective corresponds to a social ideal. It even passes for social duty and virtue.
But the key words are passes for. It achieves the beneficial end, but it purposefully avoids the self he's terrified of. Rather than facing it, learning to control it, he simply runs from it. It's only once he's forced to kill that Vash reconsiders the words he's lived his life by, and, inspired by the ones he loves, confronts himself to be able to love them back rather than forcing them away once more. After all, if he goes from place to place receiving love rather than hate, doesn't that make the world more positive? Vash's end is realizing that the negativity was not required, but more or less a justification of his guilt and self-hatred. More was possible, but only if he loved himself first. Perfect Blue, otherwise known as The Perfect Movie, was Satoshi Kon's directorial debut, establishing a running theme throughout all of his works. Where does reality end and fiction begin? This is the concern for Mima, a dedicated performer. She begins the story as a pop idol in the group Cham, a singer and dancer whose role is to put on the expected show. Yes, it is chaotic backstage, their outfits hardly pinned together before curtain, and yes, in her off hours, she is just a regular person, in fact one who's often quite nervous and reserved. But you would never know any of this seeing her on stage, capturing their attention so effortlessly. They work hard, but the show is not about their effort, even though it requires it. This is a fiction willingly entered into between the performer and the audience. The mask she wears is one of her idealized self, dropping these qualities which people don't find appealing and exaggerating the ones they do, working hard to appear effortless. She takes her anxiety, where she often sits like a child while others fight about her around her, and on stage turns it into a shyness instead, something she breaks through to communicate with the most important person in that moment, the audience. It makes her appealing, and it makes them feel special, downfalls turned into lovable tropes instead. It gives a taste of the person, a hint at maybe what they're like behind the scenes, but never confirming it. Because, after all, who would pay to see a normal person, something they could witness for free anywhere? What they want to see is someone special.
The building up of prestige is always a product of collective compromise. Not only must there be one who wants prestige, there must also be a public seeking somebody on whom to confer prestige. That being so, it would be incorrect to say that a man creates prestige for himself out of his individual will to power. It is on the contrary an entirely collective affair.
This is one of the most prevalent functions of the persona, to hide the messiness underneath. On stage it is exaggerated, but it is present everywhere, a trade we make with the others. We present only the best to test the waters, to gain their attention, and only slowly over time reveal the true self to those who provide the most in return. Appearing special for all, the ones who are truly special get to see our regular, normal selves, reversing the equation. Our worst becomes our best. This is the generic persona's role, commodified on the stage. The important thing is that, as an exhausting act, it is able to be dropped. Mima returns home with fan letters, the words of people who buy into the performance, but she sets them on the table to feed her fish and run a bath first, only returning when she has a moment of waiting. She's able to separate herself from it, recover, and be that more relaxed person underneath. The persona is not her, it simply benefits her. And of course, she must be there, must be able to express herself, for it to represent anything and mean anything as such. However, this changes for the worse when she shifts from being an idol to being an actress. Leaving Cham behind, she lands a small role on the serialized drama Double Bind, which slowly evolves into a leading role, a traumatic leading role. It requires her to act out scenes which would leave anyone who experiences them scarred for life, and to do so again and again, multiple takes and multiple scenes in the emerging narrative. This is an entirely different game. A performer augments reality, but an actor creates a new one. They don't wear a mask of their ideal self, but of an entirely different one, shedding their own personality to live someone else's life, in and out with the calls of cut. To sell the scene, to provide the product and play their role, they must be able to leave themselves behind. And yet we know that a mask never entirely covers. While the face may change, the eyes behind it will always be the same. While they play as someone else, their existence still is there within, experiencing moments which it knows logically are not real, but which it still has occurring to its form, which it cannot detach itself from. These horrible things happening to Mima's character If she has to feel them as real to sell them, if they have to be enacted upon her form as almost real, then how can we say she hasn't experienced some degree of them? Those are the components of experience itself. This is furthered by the celebration she receives for her acting. Yes, it is not about the character, but how good she is as the character, but is that not still a detachment from herself? It's being told that what people love her for is her ability to be someone else, that they don't want to see her, but who she can be. Each bit of praise is reinforcement that the way to succeed is to not be herself. Under a mask, the praise simply reinforces the need for one. Then you add to this the number of eyes, and things get very murky. She ends up doing many interviews, photo shoots, and the like, but she never gets to do them as herself. Her agent directs her that she has to shift the narrative, be not the former pop idol that the interviews try to label her as, but rather a tried and true, pure actress. That's the thing about the public eye. It always has an angle. We must fit into the narratives of others. We need personas exactly because everyone has this, which we're working around in between, and if you don't set it for yourself, they will be forced to set it for you. It demands a mask, and so you may as well make it the most advantageous one possible. This is the strategy of the performer, at least. But it also feels so less genuine, not just for us knowing of their training, but also for them. Here she is being seen and celebrated by so many, and it's not even close to how she actually feels. Interviews are supposed to be about the person behind the roles, and yet it's just another role of its own, her time away from the mask still under one. How many is she wearing? When this many people know a fake version of her, well, which one is real? If she came out and said all the past interviews were a lie, that she's stressed and hates her life, would they believe this new one or all the previous ones? The her which exists in this world is not actually herself, but the image of her that other people have. And too many people have an image of her for her to control it. Herself has become beyond her grasp.
The forces that burst out of the collective psyche have a confusing and blinding effect. As the influence of the collective unconscious increases, so the conscious mind loses its power of leadership. The conscious personality is pushed about like a figure on a chessboard by an invisible player. It is this player who decides the game of fate, not the conscious mind and its plans.
This is why she begins to believe an imposter on the internet, a website called Mima's Room pushing the narrative that she's forced to be an actor even though she wants to remain an idol. While she disagrees with this, she can't disagree with the facts it presents, how this imposter knows she steps onto the train in the bath right foot first always and had a bad day the one time she didn't, along with many more intimate details of her life and schedule down to what she bought that day. How could anyone know all of this and her genuine reasons for it? As someone who knows all these things, that can only be her. And by presenting that to the world, this very emotional, personal stream rather than all these very polished interviews, well, isn't Mima's Room actually being more genuine? It's doing the screaming that she only does alone, showing everyone a vision of her which is actually suffering just as she is, even if the reason why might be a little different. And if she is spending so much time under the public mask that she doesn't even have time for herself anymore, to feed her fish, now dead in her tank, that is, to be her true self, how does she even know that these motivations it claims are false? Maybe she's only still trying to be an actress because she's growing used to the masks, because she feels she wouldn't be accepted for that which was underneath. If she can't even fulfill her own desires, then does she know herself?
Once the unconscious contents break through into consciousness, filling it with their uncanny power of conviction, the question arises of how the individual will react. Will he be overpowered by these contents?
This is why she accepts the fake Mima as more real, losing sight of her own actions and instead taking reality as what the website reports. Once one becomes aware of the persona, all the actions become evidence that they were merely the will of others. So does she even know how to live as Mima? Doubting this, all she can do is listen to the evidence. This is the issue with fame. We can handle a few people seeing a fake version of us. We can control that, get to know them and present a true self. But we can't control a whole country seeing a fake version of us, a whole world. We cannot convince each one. At that scale, the second we are aware of the persona, we are also lost. The perspective of others can often shape our entire lives, applying a role in its consequences, and sometimes another mask is the only way out. Take Kuranosuke in Princess Jellyfish. While he does live a very privileged life, one many would kill to have, that doesn't mean it's one which is actually good for him or free of responsibilities. The child of a high-ranking politician, he's expected to be more like his brother Shu, careful, calculating, and timid in all matters except business. When people see him, they don't really just see him, but they see the entire family, a whole history of actions he never took, but in a way still applied to him. If someone offers him a job, for example, they're not really offering it to him, but to the expectations of his family name. With all these pre-coded expectations, the only way to succeed is to give in, to become exactly what the others expect. The perceptions of others, long before his own life began, set a persona he must take on to survive. It's only natural for a political family living and dying on public opinion. You're not supposed to be yourself, but what the people expect. Like the suits they wear, you're not supposed to go outside of these rigid boundaries. You pick from a couple colors, with maybe a hint of personality in the tie, and that's it. The rest is there for others to choose. This is something Kuranosuke dreads. With a name that well known, pretty much everyone he meets is going to expect the same kind of thing from him, when what he really desires is, well, to be the kid that Shu never got to be, going to parties and buying silly things and just having fun instead of piling on responsibility. He wants to be his actual self, not this pale imitation designed for mass opinion. Yes, it is more limited, but that is the point. Be appealing to everyone and you're appealing to no one in particular. The self is never validated. And so he forms a direct opposition through fashion. As the suits represent conformity, fitting into such rigid, never-changing design, his choice of clothing is, well, the opposite. A fan of more high-concept fashion, he adorns himself in exaggerated forms designed to stand out rather than blend in, entire outfits that can be made or broken based on an accessory too. They're not easy to put together, get into, or pull off confidently, but that is the point. Instead of the pre-made assembly of the suit, they're an expression of the individual, a bunch of disparate parts pulled into cohesion by their will, and used in a distinct manner from everyone else who owns them. Yes, it is just a collection of things others have made, but he is the only one to wear them in this exact way.
For the uniqueness of an individual must not be understood as a mere strangeness or singularity of his substance or components, but rather as a peculiar combination of elements or as a gradual differentiation of functions and capacities, which in themselves are universal. Every human face has a nose, 2 eyes, etc. But these universal factors are variable, and it is this variability which makes individual peculiarity possible.
We may only be what others allow, but we always choose which specific combination of those things, just like an outfit. And if you rearrange those pieces enough, the origin becomes almost unrecognizable, doesn't it? We can never escape it, but we can make it so no one will ever see, and as such effectively leave it and its expectations behind. He tried to be out and be his true self without this mask, but everybody already knows who he is, which makes genuine connection almost impossible. Even if people are fighting to date him or to be his friend, they're only doing so because of what that name can provide, the status or money. No one who is looking at him is actually seeing him, but rather what he can be the means to. Yes, he has a lot of privilege, but the cost is that he doesn't get to use any of it for his true self. That's why his fashion is so bold and contrary to his gender. The more there is to look at in the combination of order of the parts, the less people care for the parts. The more it says woman, the less one will look for man. And can one find Kuranosuke if they cannot first find a man? It removes him entirely from the context which always holds him back, the known contents, and presents people only with his true self, the combination. The Kuranosuke he didn't choose, the one others made, is gone, and the one he desires is present. That's maybe the most odd thing about the persona. Since others often create it, escaping himself is actually escaping them. But the funny thing is how easily we can trick ourselves. Do we truly know the source of our desires, and if maybe they are a mask of their own? Kuranosuke says at the start of the series that he's doing this in order to avoid his family and be able to party. He insists that
cross-dressing's just my hobby. I'm normal.
But does one really sense confidence from how he says that statement? And when he meets Tsukimi and her band of shut-ins called the Sisterhood, a group of girls who spend their days inside in hyperfixation, he quite readily gives up his own nights out, seemingly without a second thought as he hangs up on the people calling to ask. Dressed to the nines, he goes over to their old-school apartment building instead to just watch as Tsukimi feeds the pet jellyfish he helped her save. He's given up everything he supposedly does all of this for. This dramatic shift, what else could it mean but that those desires may not have been the most true, but rather the excuse for something else? What if he only chose to go out and party because it was a logical excuse to dress in this way? Sure, he claims that it's just a hobby and he's normal, but in such an unconvincing tone, and all the boredom with which he responds to his life fades away when fashion comes up. The times we see him acting passionately are not when he's meeting people, but when he's home alone dreaming up the next dress. He can't draw it out, he sure as hell can't sew it together, but the ideas come almost naturally to his mind, as if this femininity was simply what he was meant for. And where he expresses this, with the Sisterhood, a band of strangers disconnected from public knowledge, that seals the deal. Because as their sign says, no boys allowed. They are definitive proof that he can be the opposite. He questions how he comes to feel so at peace here, but it's obvious. They validate that hidden desire, that's something he knows, but doesn't want to realize. And so he keeps it down, finds a way to get what he wants but without having to acknowledge what it means. He shapes his entire self around not realizing what he truly is.
One's real individuality is always present and makes itself felt indirectly, if not directly. Although the ego consciousness is at first identical with the persona, the compromise role in which we operate for the community, yet the unconscious self can never be repressed to the point of extinction.
Just as much as he was hiding from the perception of others, he was hiding from himself. Sometimes the mask is not always just to hide from others, not always applied by them. Sometimes we can have it even when looking in the mirror. Just as interesting can be looking not at why someone chooses a persona, but why others do or don't believe it. After all, it is a collective action, so the wills of others are just as important. This is Kamina's story in Gurren Lagann, a man who finds success in a change of theater. Born in Giha village, a stuffy hole in the ground, he desires something everyone else thinks is a myth, the surface, a place without ceilings. He saw it with his father many years ago, but too afraid to follow, he returned to the village, and has remained there ever since despite his best efforts not to. He tries time and time again, but his nonsensical plans are always foiled by the village chief, his own incompetence, his followers' abandonment, or like we see, all three at once. When he tries to take on the persona of a fearless leader known far and wide, it has no effect because no one believes it. Not only have they seen every failed attempt he has made, but also what does far and wide even mean when you live in a hole in the ground? To them, this is the whole world. They know for certain that no one else knows his name, that his exploits are simply what they've seen. So his followers abandon him at the first sign of punishment, and the girls see him as a loser because he's just a man with big dreams, pretending to be so. If no one is willing to accept the persona, then it simply isn't true. This changes when the ceiling collapses and a gunman falls through, though, followed by Yoko, a girl from the surface, or at least the hole in the ground next door. Up there, they fight these things off daily, and with her help, as well as the miniature gunmen that Simone finds and pilots, really mostly because of that, they defeat this foe, reach the surface, and unite with Littner Village. This is where Kamina gets his chance, because up here, well, he can lie better. When he says far and wide to someone who's seen the surface, an endless horizon, well, that means more to them than it does to someone in a pit. They might doubt it, they sure as hell haven't seen it, but can they actually prove what is over that horizon? That he hasn't done some great thing far where they've never seen? The possibility exists, at least. Plus, they've never seen all his failures down there. They have no evidence to doubt him, even if there's no evidence to believe in him yet. That is, until he creates it. Despite fighting gunmen every day, the people of Littner Village never thought of piloting one for themselves, mostly because it's a death wish. You want a tiny human to get close to these hulking machines? But Kamina, the eternal dumbass, does so, and therein lies his greatest strength. Not strategy, but having so little of it to speak of that he's unpredictable. Just as the humans never thought to get close, the beastmen who pilot these mechs never prepared for someone to get close. So when he does, with the help of Simone of course, he's able to actually get inside one of them and use it against them. He is not a genius, he's just so dumb you can't predict him. He got lucky, but he got lucky while yelling about how he didn't get lucky. That little shred of possibility that he was actually a great man, well, it actually has some possible proof behind it now. And even though it is only a slim possibility, that is the most hopeful choice. What makes them want to fight harder? The idea that this idiot got lucky, or the possibility that a great leader just dropped right into their lap and is going to save them from this eternal fight? They want the latter to be true, and so it becomes true as they accept his act. Deep down, as he admits to Yoko, he's actually terrified constantly.
Honestly, I was just acting tough. But Simon, he kept on drilling away. His drilling let me put on a brave face.
And as she sees, he's hardly as charismatic one-on-one. But so long he yells it and the people desire it, well, it's as good as fact. The people then act on this fact, willing to take more risks of their own because they have a miracle worker leading them into battle, which then leads to greater success, which they then take as further evidence that Kamina is great, even though he's constantly being saved by Yoko, Simone, and everyone else. He isn't actually powerful, but he says he is, and maybe more importantly, it's easier to believe he is than that they are.
Besides the possibility of becoming a prophet, there's another alluring joy subtler, and apparently more legitimate. The joy of becoming a prophet's disciple. Through his deification of the master, the disciple apparently, without noticing it, waxes in stature. Moreover, does he not possess the great truth? Not his own discovery, of course, but received straight from the master's hands.
Think about it. They have too much knowledge of themselves. That is, they know their true self, not just their persona. They can remember all those times they failed, all those terrified thoughts they had while appearing to stand strong. There's so much evidence of weakness to overcome in their own minds when considering a full, real person. That simply doesn't exist for a character like Kamina, though. Someone who only tells you the best and someone you don't know the truth of. They know when they are lying, but they can't be certain that he is. So they can only believe they're powerful by believing he is, separating it all from that doubt. He isn't just his own mask, but he's actually theirs too. In the end, we see a distinct pattern. The persona has its use case, a tool of social cohesion which brings people together, taking the act of self-discovery and collectivizing it. It presents an easier path to interact with the world and others, not having to dig into every gritty detail, but instead to present an idealized front, the person we wish to be, effectively becoming real, revealing the one we actually are only to a select few. In a way, it can be what keeps us special, what allows us to connect and be somewhat of ourselves. But it isn't the only way, and the other half of that pattern is much more negative. How does it achieve all of those things? By flattening experience, by taking something which should be a vast expanse of possible selves and limiting it down to only what is most efficient for the whole. They allow us to connect with others by revoking complexity. They squash our desires by hiding visibility of anything which isn't normal. Is there really even a normal anywhere? Or have we all just been assuming everyone else is and acting like we must be as well? Are we all hurting when we don't really have to? Based on the number of stories that fit this concept, I can only think that we are, and the science backs this up. A 2021 study, Masking is Life, Experiences of Masking in Autistic and Non-Autistic Adults, did exactly what the title suggests and studied the experience of masking in a range of people. 238 out of 461 who reported that they engaged in the behavior. The participants ranged from those with the diagnosis to those who had no reason to ever believe they would. The process was collecting open-ended answers to survey questions and then having multiple parties analyze and classify the data to create more generalized codes. By having these categories, the impacts of masking could be quantified as much as possible through that average of the sample. This was carried out with a general sample ranging in age, although skewed towards women. They found that a majority of people, both typical and divergent, reported masking, and that the patterns discovered were more of a focus on others' thoughts than themselves, an internal loss of identity, a drain on energy both physical and mental, and an inability to drop the mask once used. In short, it becomes you while it robs from you. These are some of the open-ended answers that they collected.
I used to copy friends and practice in front of the mirror as a child.
I have a lower sense of self than most seem to. I feel foreign to myself because all of the behaviors I've adopted to mask have been to keep myself safe, but they've also boxed me into a corner and stifled me.
I'm almost spinning like a top mentally. It could take a day or two to recover.
I feel that I am grieving for the little kid who just wanted their own space to breathe and play as they wish. They were forced to be someone else. I feel as though I'm wearing a different person. I don't know where I went or who I could have become if I hadn't been forced to be someone else.
I think I am very good at masking. So good I'm struggling to tell what's mask and what's not.
It's very hard to pick apart what you've been masking, as you don't know what's normal. You begin unraveling all the examples throughout your life. It takes a huge emotional and physical toll. I find it confusing how I've coped before and now I cannot.
The only person in the world that even begins to know the real me is my partner.
This isn't just a cool concept in a story, and it sure as hell isn't some mystical bullshit about an inherent pool of human knowledge. It is the flattening of human experience on a massive scale. And for what? For efficiency? So that we don't have to design things to work for any person in particular, but instead for some perceived average? The thing about an average is that it doesn't exist. In trying to account for everyone, all it does is somewhat fit a bunch of people, but no one in particular, while then excluding the rest. And as we said, how do we know all those people it does fit aren't struggling with it themselves? It could just be a huge survivorship bias, where because we only see the successes, because everyone is masking all at once, we just assume that we are the weird one and stay quiet, and the average ticks on being for everyone, but no one. Yes, labels help us communicate. Roles play a crucial part in the specialized societies we all know. We could not have gotten this far without humans being efficient, playing their roles. But I don't think normal is a real role. I don't believe it plays a crucial part in that. Being normal isn't connected to being good at any job. Being normal isn't key to making other people happy. The concept of normal is just an excuse to keep people in line, to draw an average for the express purpose of saying, you are the problem. Our collective unconscious is the buildup of information we call history. And somewhere in there, a dangerous idea was set forth that we needed to not just be human, but to be the right kind of human. That we had to hide our true selves, keep them behind closed doors, find delicate, coded ways to express them. But there is no right kind of human. There are just humans. The most important part of understanding the persona is simply understanding that they are not good for us, and that with enough effort, we can do away with the worst of them. We examine some stories and some old man's ideas to try and understand why we feel the way we do, but the task after that is to understand how we fix it. And I don't have that part. But I hope something I said was able to achieve the first step, to give you some reflection on something you do and maybe an idea as to why. And I hope this ending made it clear that there's nothing wrong with you being you. People may hate you for it. But if you're not introducing any negativity, not putting anyone down or hurting someone else, then they are the one who's wrong for doing all of that. They're the ones making the world more negative to make their unhappiness feel more natural. They have no end goal, no salvation, just a false average. But those focused on positivity do have somewhere to go. And so one day, so long as we keep at it, there is a goal, and that is our distinction, and that means we can get there.